Hello, this is the video for the data mining course, and in this video I would like to explain about data warehouse. So first, before we know more about the data warehouse, I would like to give you some guideline or the agenda of this course. Actually, there will be a lot of concepts and there will be some examples, but those examples are not related with the calculation or the computation. So I will just split this video into three parts, the basic concepts, and then the other video will be related with the data cube and OLAP, and also the other video will discuss the remaining concepts about the design, usage, implementation, and summary. And before I start this lesson, I would like to mention the name. Okay? So the data warehouse, I would like to emphasize that this is about the online analytical processing. Okay, or we can just put the very short word OLAP. Usually people say OLAP. Okay, this is OLAP. The other term that you may found in this lesson is about the transaction DB. So the transaction DB, some books they mention as the online transaction processing or OLTP. Okay, so we will learn those basic concepts in this slide. What is data warehouse? In the definition, okay, there are many definitions actually, but I just want to summarize this based on the book that I referred to. It is a decision support database, and this decision support database is maintained separately from the organization's operational database. So there is a decision support database and there is another operational database. And it supports information processing by providing a solid platform of consolidated historical data. Okay, so the key point is the historical data for the analysis. So based on the definition, I can just summarize that a data warehouse is a subject-oriented, integrated, time-variant, non-volatile collection of data in support of management's decision-making process. So there are four. Okay, it is the subject-oriented, integrated, time-variant, and non-volatile. So we are going to learn each of these. So the data warehousing, okay, when you say data warehousing, this is different with data warehouse. So data warehouse is a noun. Data warehousing, so it is an action. So data warehousing is the process of constructing and using data warehouses. In the data warehouse, the first characteristics, I can see this is the characteristic is subject oriented. So if you are dealing with the subject oriented, it means it will be organized around the major subjects. So the major subject, it depends on your organization. If your organization is a business organization, then it will be related to the customer, product, and sales. But if your organization is related with the university, so the major subject might be different. Okay, and focus. Okay, the focus is also a little bit different. The focus of the data warehouse is for the decision maker. Okay. So the key point is the decision maker. It's not for the transaction or operation. Okay, it's different. And data warehouse, it provides a simple and concise view around particular subject by excluding data that are not useful in the decision support process. So you already learned in the data pre-processing. So when you know that there are some data which is not useful, so you can remove it. So it's the same with this idea. Actually, if you think that the data is not for the decision support, then you will remove it. Okay. The other characteristic is about integrated. What is integrated? So the integrated means if it is dealing with multiple sources, CRM. CRM. CRM is the customer relationship management. ERP. What is ERP? I think one of the course in our department name is ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning. There might be other data source, and usually in the data warehouse is the integration. It is the integration multiple heterogeneous data sources. It can be from a relational database, from flat files. Flat files mean from the text file, or from the online transaction records. So when we deal with this integration, yeah, we will do the data cleaning and data integration techniques. Ensure the consistency, like the naming convention. Maybe in the we learn also the consistency about the integration, data integration about the two universities that merged together. So yeah, there was an example about that one. And let's say the encoding structure. So it's also one of the issues, okay? So if the structures are different, then you may need to integrate those and how to measure the attribute and etc. Yeah, hotel price, currency, tax, yeah, that kind of things. Yeah, like in the hotel price, you need to understand the currency. Either you want to use dollar or you want to use the Korean one. Okay, because if your customers are foreigners, then you need to adopt with multiple currency, not only dollar, maybe it's also the Japanese yen or the Chinese yuan. Tax, okay, tax is also a little bit different. If your room is the luxurious room, then maybe the tax is higher than the standard room. Breakfast covered, so this also a kind of the different department or is the different section, a different organization. Let's say the breakfast is an outsourced company, then yeah, there will be another database to present about the breakfast and about the restaurant that provide breakfast. So when the data is moved to the warehouse, it is converted. Okay? So it is converted into the data warehouse. And also, yeah, we need to think when we include the data into the data warehouse, what will be the next? So if it is for reporting or it is for budgeting or it is only for the analysis. In the other characteristic is about the time variant. The time variant means it is the time horizon that we want to see. Okay. The time horizon for the data warehouse, it is significantly longer than that of the operational system. Okay, what does it mean? If you are dealing with the operational database, you will use the current value data. So you want to know what is happening, what was happening in the morning, what was happening 1 hour ago. Okay. And usually for the operational data, okay, for the operational data, the time horizon is like 60 until 90 days. Okay. But the data warehouse, it will be very long, so like 5 until 10 years. Okay. And the operational database is usually for updating the records. But the data warehouse is for the sophisticated snapshots of data. And the operational is usually may contain or may not contain an element of time. But the data warehouse, it contains an element of time. So the element of time means you know the date, you know the time, and maybe the time will be very precise until how many seconds you need. So the T structure in the database, it will contain an element of time explicitly or implicitly. So in the implicit, time, usually you can represent with the time in Unix. Okay, so there's another format of the time. And if it is explicit, it means you know that it is September 22 or September 1st, 2020. So it's very explicit to see the date. So the operational data may or may not contain time element. Okay, so this one. So if you have the time, actually the time can be regarded as the key. Okay, and the data will be the additional data, but you will have a key as a time. So you have time as the key, and then the remaining is the data. For example, the customer who bought that product in a particular time. Okay. The other characteristic is about non-volatile. So the non-volatile of the data warehouse, it means it is a physically separate store of data. So if we have the OLTP, do you still remember OLTP? Okay, it is online transaction processing. So the OLTP database, usually it has the operational things like how can you read the data, okay, and then how can you add or how you change the data, how can you delete the data. So those basic concepts are available in the database class, and also the information system development. You will at least learn about the basic root. Okay, create, read, update, and delete. But in the data warehouse, it's only read. Okay? Because we want to use the data for the decision support system. So there will be no additional operation like read, add, change, delete, but it's only read. So the operation usually just initialize the loading data and access. Initialize means you extract the data from the operational database and then you want to access the data. So there are two only. So the idea of this data warehouse, it is a multi-tier architecture. Multi-tier architecture means there will be some step. Okay, the first step or the first tier is the data source. You have the operational database, you have the external sources, and you will use everything, and you will do the ETL. Okay, so what is ETL? We will learn that later, a little bit later. And after you do the ETL, so the data warehouse will be created based on the metadata repository. So the metadata repository is the subject base, okay, subject, the characteristic that we already learned before. If it is subjected to the business, then the data warehouse might be related to the customer sales. And after we have the data warehouse, we will create the data marts. Okay, so the data marts is a small database. If you think like you have a big supermarket, okay, let's say eMart, okay, there will be another things for the smaller one. With, for example, eMart Everyday. So the eMart Everyday is the smaller portion of the big mart like the eMart. So after we have this data marts, then we can put those data into the OLAP server. Okay, so this OLAP, do you still remember OLAP? OLAP, it is the online analytical processing. And once we set the OLAP server, we can just do what we need to do for the analysis. For example, we can do query or report, we can do the analytics, and we can do the data mining. So this course is the data mining course, and this is one of the goal to extract the data. So that's why we learn many things in the first section with regard to the operational database, how can we handle the data pre-processing, etc. And then we need to understand the data warehouse. After we know about the data warehouse, we need to learn about how to access the data warehouse or the data mart in the server or maybe in the OLAP server. And finally, yeah, we will use it. So there's those basic concepts are necessary to introduce to you, and after you know all these steps, you are ready to learn about the data mining. So this is the difference between the OLTP and OLAP. If in terms of the user, the OLTP mostly are related to the IT professionals. So OLAP mostly related to the knowledge worker. So that's why now the popular term in the job market is data scientist. Okay? So the data scientist is one of the option of job, one of the job option for the OLAP. Okay? Function, the OLTP is related to the day-to-day operation, but the OLAP is related to the decision support. The DB design for the OLTP is more application oriented because it is about the transaction. The transaction means, yeah, you buy, you sell, you put the stock, and then when the customer buy, when you deliver the product, when you put the product in your warehouse, and etc. So it's application. But the OLAP is more subject oriented. So you want to know based on the supplier. You want to know the data from about the customer. You want to know about the sales. So it's more the subject. In the data itself, for the OLTP is more current. Current means, yeah, you can see the time span. Is the time variant is very short. But the OLEP is more historical data. The OLTP is more detailed, flat, relational, isolated, but the OLAP is summarized, multi-dimensional, integrated, and consolidated. The usage of OLTP is repetitive. Yeah, you will access it maybe in one day. You will access it 1,000 times or million times, but the OLTP is ad hoc. If you need the data, then you will access it. The access of the OLTP is read, write, and delete. As you know, the previous figure mentioned about those, but the OLTP is scanning, okay, just reading. And the unit of work is short, simple transaction, but the OLTP unit a complex query. So if you learn the database, you know that the query contains of several syntax, like select the column, and then after you select the column, there will be conditions. After you have the conditions, you may group by, or you may have another option to select those conditions into a few, or you want to sort the data. So those kind of options are very complex in query. So the number of record access, usually the OLTP is not less than 100, because you need to access, and then you need to update, you need to read, and then you need to access again, you need to update, and so on. But for the OLAP, you need to access millions of data in order to show the analysis. The number of users, for the OLTP is many, okay. But for the OLAP, usually is not that many, because only some people who are the decision makers, they need to access this OLAP. And that's also affect the DB size. Okay. The DB size of the OLTP usually is not that huge, because after you run the operation, then you will do the backup, and the backup will go to the data warehouse, for example, and then the data warehouse will be related with the OLAP. So the OLAP usually is larger than the OLTP. And the metric to measure the OLTP, usually it is based on the transaction throughput. So how many transactions that you can handle in one day, for example. For the OLAP, it is more related to the query throughput or the response. So now, the question is why we need to have a separate database. Yeah. So the separate database is necessary for the high performance. If you combine the data warehouse and the OLTP. So let's say the data warehouse now is related with the OLAP, and the DBMS is related with the OLTP. If you combine those, So it doesn't match. Because of OLTP, you need the access methods. You need to do the index directly. You need the concurrency control, and also you need to have the recovery because it is the online transaction. So for example, if there is a hacker or if there is someone who tried to do phishing, so the data should be recovered immediately. So it is in the OLTP. But in the OLAP or the OLAP, it is more complex and it does not require any concurrency control. So that's why this OLAP should be separated. If you want to analyze it, then you need to put the data warehouse in separate. Okay, so this is the original. Data warehouse should be separated from the database or the OLTP. And also the data warehouse have different functions. Okay, different function means different data. Of course, you need to handle about the missing data. The missing data is the decision support from the historical data. Okay? And usually the operational data they will not maintain. So you need to think how to replace the missing values. Data consolidation. Data consolidation means the aggregation. Summarization is necessary when you deal with multiple sources or heterogeneous sources. Data quality. Okay, different sources typically use inconsistent data representations. So that's why it's very important to deal with the data quality when you do the integration. Codes and format. Let's say the Indonesian company or the Korean company. The Korean company, they have the brands in Indonesia. So yeah, they want to make a consistent data. How? The language are different. Okay? The characters are also different, but they need to have the same quality of data. There will be many issues like the codes, the formats, and languages. Yeah? And yeah, there are more and more systems that perform OLAP analysis directly on the national database. Of course, it is possible. Okay? It is possible for the data warehouse. It is directly from the database, so you don't need to create your own data warehouse. That's fine, but it will be very good if you have a separate data warehouse without interfering the transactional process. So there are three, at least, the data warehouse models that we can learn. So the enterprise warehouse. This enterprise warehouse means the models to collect all the information about subject spanning from all the organization. The second one is for data mart. Data mart is very specific user of groups, maybe only for sales department or only for customer relationship or maybe only for the supplier relationship. Okay, so this kind of data mart is only for specific organization, but it is still in the same business. The other kind of data warehouse model, it can be the virtual warehouse. So if you learn database, you will not create a new data warehouse, but you can just create the views. Okay? Views in the database means you want to select the data and then you will put into one query and then you will just make a new view. So that's what we call a view usually. And only some of the possible summary views may be materialized. So once you know there's a view, then you will just keep that view as your data warehouse. So we call this is virtual data warehouse. There is no storage. There is no database for creating the data warehouse, but it is virtual. Once you need, you execute the view or you execute the query. And for the ETL, okay, as I mentioned to you in the figure before, we have the ETL. So ETL, it stands for the extraction, transformation, and loading. So it is a common term for bridging between the database and the data warehouse. First, we will extract. What does it mean by extract? Extract means we want to get the data from multiple heterogeneous and external sources. So you know that data warehouse is subject oriented. The subject oriented means we need to extract and we need to integrate from the multiple resources. After we extract, we will do the cleaning. Okay, you'll learn about the data cleaning in the previous section. And data transformation, the second one. The transformation means we need to convert the data from the legacy or host format to warehouse format. So from the transaction to analytical. And we can load. Okay, what does it mean by load? So load means it is the data that you already transformed. You want to use it for your future purpose, for the analysis or for the reporting, or maybe other kind of purpose like the budgeting. So there are many functions like sort, summarize, consolidate, or compute the views, check integrity, build indices, or partition the data. Yeah, those are the tasks for the loading. The last one is about the refresh. So after you have the loading activity or the loading task, then you can just refresh. When you finish the refresh, it means you will get the data from the data warehouse. Okay, I think that's all for the first section. Can you answer this one? Mention 4 characteristics of data warehouse. Okay, there are 4. What are they? Subject oriented, and then integrated, time variant, and non-volatile. Okay, that's good. What is the main difference between the OLTP and OLAP? So in the OLTP means the transactions. It is daily activities, or the time span will be very short, 60 until 90 days. But the OLAP is for the analytical purpose for the decision maker, and the time span is very long, usually about 5 or 10 years. Okay? There are 3 data warehouse models. Can you mention them? Okay, we have 3, which is the enterprise, and then data mart, and then virtual data warehouse. Okay, those explanation are available here. Okay, enterprise, data mart, and virtual warehouse. And what are the main tasks in ETL? Okay? The main tasks, there are 3 actually. Okay? Extract, transform, and load based on the E and T and L. But after you extract, you need to do the data cleaning. And after you load, okay, after loading, you need to refresh in order to get the newest data in the data warehouse. Okay, I think I will stop in this first section and I will continue the second section in the other video. Thank you very much for listening.